attack the soldiers. So they shot the dog. And that was the first encounter with Marwan Barghouthi and Israeli soldiers. And this what made him realize what occupation really means. And my grandmother told me that he cried for a whole week after that. And at the age of 18, as any other Palestinian kid, he was throwing rocks at the Israeli soldiers. So they arrested him. And during the interrogation in his book, you can read the story about the investigator who came to him and kicked him in the groin areas and told him before he passed out that a terrorist like you shouldn't have terrorists in this world. And I'm here, like, taking my father's message and his fellow prisoners. And I'm telling this interrogator and all Israeli right wing who are saying that we're terrorists, my father is a terrorist. We're not, we're just freedom fighters and we're going to continue. My father is someone who really, who spent in Israeli jails more than 21 years. He was kicked out 7 years from Palestine. He was elected as a parliament member in both elections, 1996 and 2006. He's a very well-educated man. He's obsessed with education. He got his PhD in prison. And I remember one time I asked him, hey, how about you send me some of your favorite books? And the next day, like a few days later, the lawyer came to me with a list of books. It was 180 books, just like his favorite. So that gives you an idea of who Marwan Barghouthi is. Now, for my personal experience, let's first talk about Marwan Barghouthi, the well-recognized, internationally prominent leader. Marwan Barghouthi is supported by very high-profile personnel, like such as Nelson Mandela, who supported publicly the release of Marwan Barghouthi, and my great mother, who I send her my love and energy, and the greatest woman on earth for me, who took my father's message everywhere and started the international campaign of the release of Marwan Barghouthi from Nelson Mandela's cell. Desmond Tutu is a huge supporter. Angela Davis, the ex-US president, Jimmy Carter, who said publicly that the release of Marwan Barghouthi is a necessity for the peace operation between Palestine and Israel. Adolfo Ezequiel, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, Laurent, said it publicly. My father is nominated for the Nobel Prize for Peace. So that's being said, let's put all this aside and talk about my father. For me, Marwan Barghouthi is not like people look at him, the political leader, whatever they say about him. He's honestly my hope in life. He's my role model. He's the greatest person I've ever met in my life. At the age of 11, I was in my uncle's house, and I was looking at the TV, and I didn't understand why a few days before the Israeli soldiers, maybe 30 or 35 of them, came to our house, attacked the house, and put us, me and my two siblings, and my mother in one room and took the whole house, put the Israeli flag on our balcony, and came to me and asked me, "Where is your father?" I didn't understand why they were so violent, why they were so aggressive. But a few days later, I was in my uncle's house and I was looking at the TV, and I saw the worst moment of my life, my father surrounded with Israeli soldiers and putting him in the jeep. And I honestly started crying without even knowing what's going on. I didn't even understand that it's going to take him that long to be in my life again. And it took me a few months to go to the trial court and see him. When I saw him, I just ran to touch my father, to hug him. And one of the Israeli supposedly parents of the victims He slapped me in the face until one of the Al Jazeera reporters came and defended me because all of them attacked me. And I was 12 at that time. 1 year later, I visited my father for the first time, or a few months later, I visited him for the first time. He was still in the solitary confinement. He was interrogated the worst ways of interrogations. He was being tortured, and instead of being depressed, I went with my 1 year old brother. Uh, we went through maybe 20 doors to get there. I was really scared. I didn't know what's going on. And when I reached there, of course, I couldn't even touch him. But instead of being depressed, my father is the most positive person you can ever meet. He's always smiling. He loves life. He's always talking about education, about peace, about development. And he was smiling and he didn't want to show any kind of weakness. That's who Marwan Barghouthi is. And that's who Marwan Barghouthi will always be. He's about education, he's about peace, he's about, but at the same time, he's not the man to give up on his people's rights. That's the thing that Israelis should understand. That's the thing that they think is not like is a taboo to be like insisting on your people's rights. Um, so after all, I visited him again and again until I turned 16. After 16, I would visit him only once every 2 years. I haven't seen my father in 2 years, and I haven't even get the chance to hug him in 15 years. And this is really hard because my father is a great man. He's a hero, and he's, as I said, my hope and my role model. And if you if you want to start talking about the hunger strike, the hunger strike started, of course, 24 days ago. My father, with his fellow prisoners, that reached more than 1,600 prisoners, started the hunger strike just for their basic, very basic human rights, like being able to see me, like being able to touch me, like being able to meet for the first time of his life Talia, his granddaughter, who is now 40 years old and was prevented to go into the visit room with her mother at the age of 8 months because they said she's not a first relative degree relative. And that's really hard because Talia only knows her grandfather through pictures. And they're also on a hunger strike for the end of the administrative detention, which is like being imprisoned or arrested without even visiting the trial court for years. We have 700 prisoners in that case, and this is illegal in any international law. Like, and also the visit thing is also illegal. Everything that they are protesting for, everything that they are demanding is illegal by any international law. And that's the message. It's a pure humane message, nothing, not political. That's why everyone should get him on board in support and solidarity for the Palestinian political prisoners in their hunger strike.
Thank you so much for sharing some of the details, which are really painful to hear, and I'm sure, not to mention to live through. I think it's very helpful for folks listening to understand, because it really is, like you said, a story of what it's like to live under occupation. And I was wondering, in terms of now, what are you hearing the most up-to-date news in terms of the conditions of the prisoners, the condition of your father, and also the support of people on the ground in Palestine for the strike?
Yeah. My father has been, as I said, in solitary confinement for 24 days since the first day. He got punished just to raise his voice in the New York Times. I encourage everyone who sees this to go read that article. It's one of my favorite pieces of my father, Why We Are on a Hunger Strike, on New York Times. Now, for the news, I honestly don't know anything about my father. Like, imagine living here, and I know nothing about someone who is the closest person in my life in isolation, in cell, and I know nothing. Like, and now I'm gonna talk about, I'm gonna talk about the footage, the ridiculous footage that Israelis are very like proud of it. Like it's ridiculous how these people are really monsters. My father, first of all, I want to say about this thing a few things, and then we can move on. My father spent more than 3 years in isolation throughout his prison life. So this footage could be taken anytime at that time. And one of the, like, I'm not going to go technical because you can see reports that really laugh about the footage and the quality of it. Um, I really want to say one thing. If you are able to be that ridiculous and that low and that cheap of posting such a video that you're proud of, with all your intelligence and military and tanks, that's all you got against Marwan Barghouthi? Really? Like, I dare you to give us the health report. How about you give us the health report about Marwan Barghouthi? How about you let the lawyers see him? How about you let the Red Cross see him? How about you give us anything about Marwan Barghouthi, how his conditions are, how his health conditions? And it's immoral, inhuman, and I really can't imagine how these people think. They're monsters. But I really became more positive after I saw the footage because it showed the amount of desperation the Israeli government got to, and that my father, with his willpower, with his fellow prisoners, and with only their stomachs, are making them desperate to reach that point. And I want to say that Karim Yunus, Mr. Karim Yunus, who is the longest political prisoner in history, he's been in prison for 35 years. He said yesterday that these tricks that Israelis are using or are trying to use against us, like, don't worry, Marwan Barghouthi warned us before the hunger strike about these tricks, and he told us they're going to use everything against us, including this. And in my father's book, he said back in 2004, in the hunger strike, they distributed pictures of me eating to the prisoners, and I'm used to it, and I know that they're gonna do it. And he said it to my mom 1 month before the hunger strike, what's gonna happen. And I just want to say last thing about this: if they are that low, that inhumane, and that immoral to film someone inside his bathroom, I really don't know, and I'm concerned as a son about my father, what these guys are capable of doing.
Yeah. And it seems to me like that it really has not been effective. There's been a real backlash against those tactics, which, like you said, are so unethical and so immoral, and just really show the level of surveillance and control they're attempting to exert on his life. I want to turn to something that you started, which is the Saltwater Challenge, which is, and I want you to just maybe tell us a little bit about how it started, and also if people who are watching want to take part, what they should do to take part, and what your hopes are for the campaign in terms of helping to bring more publicity to the hunger strike.
Yeah, so the Saltwater Challenge started at the 7th day of the hunger strike. I gathered my friends in the Bay Area, and I told them in my house, my father is starving himself for his basic human rights. This can't be happening. I gotta do something. We thought of something outside of the box. We thought of something that can go viral, just to raise the awareness, just to let people know that in 2017, more than 1,600 prisoners are on a hunger strike just to be able to see their families, to touch their families. And people should really know. So we thought about something, as I said, to go viral. And the Saltwater Challenge came to my mind. And I was like, these people like live on salt and water. So Saltwater Challenge is the key. I filmed myself and explained a little bit about the challenge. I challenged Muhammad Assaf, the guy who won the Arab Idol, and I challenged also one of the judges of Arab's Got Talent. Muhammad Assaf did it a few hours later. The judge did it live on MBC and on the show of Arab's Got Talent. A lot of celebrities did the challenge. Also, Adolphus Quell, who is one of my role models, the Peace Nobel Prize laureate, did it. A lot of people did it. I really like received videos from Asia, from South America, from here in the US. A lot of people did it from Europe. And I want to mention two things. First of all, a few students in Manchester went on a hunger strike in solidarity for the prisoners, and this thing was going on, was spreading in Europe, and a lot of students did it. And now 1,500 people in Morocco, they went on a hunger strike in solidarity with the political prisoners. And this all has one goal: to put more pressure on the arrogant government of Israel that doesn't want to get that this message is pure humane, that doesn't want to get that this message is all about humanity. So we asked humanity for justice, and if they got some humanity in them left, they should accept these demands.
And so if people want to do the saltwater challenge, they should use hashtag saltwater challenge, right? And post it on Twitter and Facebook, and you'll help get it. And that's how we get it.
Without spaces or underscore.
Great. So that's hashtag saltwater challenge. We only have a few more minutes. And so I'm going to combine my last two questions for you, which are basically, first of all, I was hoping you would talk a little bit about how this hunger strike fits into the broader struggle for Palestinian liberation. And also, given that it is part of that broader struggle, for those of us who are part of the solidarity movement around the world, what do you need or want from us in support during this time?
Yeah, first of all, the hunger strike is the most peaceful way to protest and to ask for your right. And that's what everyone should know. These people are going on a hunger strike, fighting with their stomachs just to get their demands. This shows you what Palestinians are all about. We're just about our demands, our basic human rights. We've been resisting this occupation for many decades, and this just shows you how Palestinians are capable of resisting even the most peaceful way just to get their rights. For the people in the world, I really encourage everyone to read about the hunger strike. I really encourage everyone to do the saltwater challenge. I really encourage everyone to talk about what's going on in Palestine, to spread the awareness, because the Israeli propaganda is ridiculous. I read the news and I see their lies day and day after. But I want to tell them one thing, it's time. I think it's time for everyone to know the truth, what's going on back home. And maybe it's time for them to open their eyes and come to the right side of history, because we're the oppressed people and we're at the right side of history. So I encourage everyone to talk about this, to do the challenge, to spread the awareness about what's going on in Palestine.
Wonderful. Aarab, thank you so much for being with us. And please know that all of us at Jewish Voice for Peace are in full solidarity with the strike and with the efforts of your father and the other leaders and everyone else who are fighting for their basic rights. And as you said, for rights for all the Palestinian people. So thank you so incredibly much for helping to tell that story.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me, of course.
Thank you, everybody.